Hey everybody, it's Michael. I have finally gotten back to doing this video. Everyone, this is a condensed video which is based on my Longarm ruler work class. Longarm ruler work for beginners. We're just going to go through it quickly here. And there is a panel. If you want to buy the panel, it's available at Spoonflower. I have linked it below. It's great for practice work, but you can also just use your own fabric and mark some lines out or some dots. You'll see as we get into it. Since I can't get out and teach right now like so many of us, I wanted to do this on video. So first of all, ruler work, Longarm, why are you interested? Well, for most people, they've tried out their Longarm and they've done some free motion quilting. Maybe you've worked on some pantographs and followed lines with your laser pointer, or if you have an ANOVA, some of you might have Pantovision and you're following digitally through the screen. But why would we want to do ruler work? Well, ruler work makes stitch in the ditch much easier, and most of us who are doing custom work on our quilts want to stitch in the ditch to stitch around shapes. Rulers help a great deal with that. And you know, it opens up a world of design possibilities, especially if you're interested in doing like a whole cloth quilt, medallion style, or just anything really. So I'm got some pictures here. Judy Madsen's probably one of my favorite ruler work artists. She's great at creating intricate designs with rulers. She does mostly straight edge and then incorporates fills, which is what I love to do. But we're also going to talk about some curved rulers and some specialty rulers. As you know, I've designed a bunch of rulers, and my other videos show you how to use those, or some of them anyway. But this is for someone who just really is wanting to start out and hasn't done ruler work before. I filmed a series, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago, and then reposted again when I switched channels, and that shows you some cross-hatching and some things like that. But I'm actually going to step through a lot of those basics again, so if you've already seen that, feel free to, you know, fast forward me some if you'd like. First thing for ruler work, let's talk about what you're going to need besides all the normal stuff that you need for all everyday quilting. Okay, so I have my ruler work foot on. Hopefully you can see that. It's a higher shank than normal. So here's what, this is the foot that came with my machine, and you might have a separate one, an open toe version. Okay, so I've got the ruler work foot on here. Let's look at a ruler. When the quilt's here, this ruler, the foot has enough height to it that this ruler is not going to go above this. If you saw this on here, you have a high chance of this ruler jumping over and then your needle hitting it. So we don't want that. Okay, so you've got your ruler foot on, right? Okay, good. And hopefully that's easy for you, whichever kind of Longarm you have, to install that. Next, you need a ruler base. Okay, so this is the ruler base I got when I first bought my machine. It's quite large. And this creates the surface so that you can have your ruler on top of your quilt here, and you've got some stability with this surface to be able to put some pressure on, a little bit of pressure. Okay, so it installs, you've got your needle up, your hopping foot's in its normal position, and this, for the ANOVA, this just slides under the hopping foot. Then you lift it once you've gotten it into position, and then it snaps down. There, so there you go. So if you have your ruler on your quilt, you can see this provides a nice table for it. Plenty of room to get around. However, what you'll find is that this base right here, bang, goes right up into this bar. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 inches of quilting space not usable because of the base. Okay. Which is okay. I mean, depending on your space here, you still got some. However, so Nova came up with a smaller one, and I don't know the dimensions on other brands, but this is the smaller base, and it's the one that I use all the time because, well, for 2 reasons. I want more quilting space, plus you will find when you use rulers that, and watch, it snaps down just the same. There we go. You'll find that you are concentrating most of the pressure on your rulers really close to where the hopping foot is in the needle, and that you don't necessarily need this extra space back here. So now when I bring this up to the bar, that's 3 inches. So I've gained 2 more inches of quilting space, which is important to me because I don't like to advance the quilt. I'm just lazy. No, it just takes time. Okay, so I've got the ruler base on, ruler foot, and I need a ruler. If you take my class, you're getting this one as part of the class, and I've chipped it a little bit. Yours would look flawless, beautiful. This is called Ruler Work 101. It has a straight edge. It has inch increments. It has some 1/4 inch lines, some dash lines. It has a curved edge, and it has 1/4 inch echo lines for that curve. So this is an all-around good one to start with. Plus it has needle stop, and some people like needle stop. And if you saw my other video about all the rulers I have, that's where you can make sure that this is lined up with the exact line that you're going on, and it will stop the hopping foot from going any further. Okay, anyway, this is the ruler. So we're ready to go. So I'm going to move this over to the panel now. Okay, so the first thing that we would be doing after we talk about why you want to use rulers in your quilting is to do some drawing. I would have handed out some drawing discs, which you may have seen in the Baptist Fans videos when I drew them out. And you would have brought a pencil, and you would have put your pencil into the drawing disc, and you would have gotten your ruler, and you would have drawn around your ruler to mimic the idea of the hopping foot. And that would give you an idea of what a 1/4 inch looks like away from the ruler, because your needle is 1/4 inch away from the edge of the hopping foot in most circumstances. I don't know if there is a particular long arm out there or a sit-down machine where the needle is not exactly a 1/4 inch. There may be some, okay, but the idea is it's approximately a 1/4 inch away. So when I have a ruler next to my hopping foot, the stitching line is 1/4 inch away from that. And that's probably one of the main things that you'll get used to as you start working with rulers is sometimes you may forget, and you may, as if you were going to just use a regular pencil and a ruler and paper or whatever, you might think, oh, I need to land right here on the corner and put your ruler right here on the corner. Well, that's wrong when we're quilting, only because we have to compensate for another 1/4 inch. So that's the first thing that we get used to is, can we follow straight lines with our rulers? And trust me, it's not that easy. Following lines is never that easy. Creating lines is not hard. And if I created a dot here and a dot here and said create a straight line between the two, you'd probably be fine. But if I said sew on this line, it's not as easy as it sounds. But that's what I make you do. Okay, so I have dropped my needle down into the top left corner. Now I do want to talk about order of quilting and direction of quilting, because you're going to find as you get more used to rulers that you may prefer to work top to bottom or bottom to top. And there are some reasons why you may want to work bottom to top if you're using lines on your rulers. I will explain that to you in a little bit. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. That's me, sorry. So here's a ruler. Don't be scared. What you want to do is start coordinating how to hold the ruler, how to move the machine, and how to produce beautiful stitches. Okay, I know, it's a lot, right? Okay, so you're going to have to try to find a balance of pressure. And when I say pressure, you never want to like be really hard pressure here. You want a light touch, but manageable. And this is just something you will have to practice. With rulers, I like to always have a finger or two off the ruler while some are on it. And I might say, okay, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, put your fingers here, put your other fingers here, just give you some suggestions. But at first, you're going to want a little bit of stability. Now, I also want you to think about this ruler base under here. This ruler base, you remember, it goes to about here. So if I put pressure close to the needle, the hopping foot, everything's fine. But you notice if I use my thumb and I put pressure down here, it makes this ruler want to hop up. That's trouble. So one thing to remember is you don't want to be holding your rulers far, far, far away from your hopping foot and expect stability. Like, this is dangerous down here. You don't want pressure down here. I mean, later you might be able to get away with it, but when you're learning, keep the pressure close to that hopping foot. Make sure you've got a base to support that pressure, okay? So several things will be happening, and let's say that I'm going to stitch down. Some things that are going to be happening is, first of all, I want to line up my ruler right up next to that hopping foot. I want to butt it up next to it. Can you see in this camera? Hopefully you can. See where that line stops? Remember, I have needle stop here. That means if I put the edge right here, close to here, I'm going to get a straight line because it's here. Now, what's one thing I've already taught you? You can't stop here. You actually have to go 1/4 inch further to be able to stitch at that point. But for lining up purposes, can you see how I'm keeping the edge of that line on the edge of this line? I can do that and get pretty good results. So that's why some people like needle stop. Now, this is a good all-around ruler. I don't use it that often. I probably should. This is what I use more than anything, is my straight ruler. Unless I'm doing curves, this is my go-to. I told you that in the video where I was showing you all the different rulers that I manufacture and the other ones that I use too. This is a 3x12, and I just use it all the time. So it does not have this needle stop on it. But you can start, I mean, if you're sewing, if you're much of a quilter, you know you're 1/4 inch and you want to be about a 1/4 inch away, but you're watching as you stitch, so you try to stay on that line. Okay, so for some of these exercises, I will use this ruler. For most, I'm going to use this because this is what you would have used in the class. And I might pull out some other ones too. All right, have I done enough talking? Let's do some stitching and see what we come up with, okay? So hopefully I'm not in the way. I'll find out when I view this during the editing process, but here we go. So let me put my glasses on. Okay, I'm in regulated mode, and I am doing a few different things. The ruler is this way. The ruler is lightly being pressed with a little teeny bit of force this way. Okay, at the same time, I'm pulling this handlebar here. I'm pulling it down towards me, but I'm also pushing it this way. So I want you to think about opposing pressures, and that's how you keep contact, the hopping foot with the ruler. These two things need to be slightly pressured towards each other at all times. So this, I've got pressure going to my left. Ruler, pressure going towards my right. At the same time, I'm pulling down very lightly to be able to travel. Okay, so here we go again. I've got pressure towards the left. I'm talking about with my right hand. pressure towards the right, holding the ruler, and I'm bringing down this handlebar. Okay, I want to show you something here. If you can see this next, since these are lined up, if I kept the edge of this ruler here that has the needle stop on this line here, do you see this next straight line? I should be able to hit that point and stop when I get there. So that's what I'm going to do. It's sort of cheating, but if you had a quilt with blocks on it, and if the blocks were in a good alignment, you would be doing the same thing. Okay, I stopped on the point. Now, you can see I pretty much stayed on the line, right? But it may falter a little bit every once in a while. Okay, so I have successfully gone down, and now I would have you travel over. And when you're traveling over, for this particular block, I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you. I'm going to keep my ruler a 1/4 inch away. That's the goal. Now I can do some things because this panel, like I told you, has kind of a grid work to it. On this ruler I have some vertical lines and some horizontal lines. If I line up vertical line here and a horizontal line, I can pretty much think that I'm going to stay true to this line that I'm stitching on. However, fabric is fabric, and fabric does have a little bit of life of its own. So it may not always be perfect. Now I want you to look at some other things too. I have the ruler closer to me, in between me and the hopping foot. That is where I feel the most comfortable. It doesn't mean that you cannot use your ruler back here. It means that if you are holding the ruler with your left hand because you're a right-handed quilter, you would have to bend your hand like this behind. Okay, which sometimes you have to get into weird positions to quilt, so this is not unusual. But you could do that. If you're a left-handed quilter, you could be using your right hand back here and guiding the machine with your left. Okay, but this is not my most comfortable way. I'm much more comfortable with the ruler between my body and the hopping foot. Okay, so that's the way I'm going to stitch this one. Now, I'm going to keep the ruler where it is and not look at the lines. Okay, and I did pretty good. Sometimes you just need to look at the line as well because you're going to see where the stitches are, and that's what you want, is the stitches to be on the line, right? So sometimes you have to adjust. Now here, we're going up. I can quilt from this side or I could quilt from this side. I'm talking about holding my ruler. That's going to be personal preference and up to you. I'm probably more comfortable with it on this side than I am on this side. And it depends on what you're lining up and what you can see. So I'm going to quilt with it to my left. Okay, so once again, I'm putting pressure going to the right, pressure on this handlebar going to the left, and then moving the machine up. Okay, let's see how that goes. Now I'm watching through my hopping foot to see where I'm stitching if I'm on the line. And this stretch here, I could leave my hand where it is for the whole time, but I recommend when you're first starting out to walk your fingers up as you stitch. So let's say I'm here, and I definitely want the most pressure as close to the hopping foot as possible, but you know, you want to stitch for a little ways. Now here, maybe I'll walk my fingers up, stitch some more. Walk my fingers up, stitch some more. You don't have to do it all in one go. You can start and stop. Okay, so we've got 3 sides done, and now we're here. And again, the ruler is closest to me, and I'm going to watch where my, what am I, out of bobbin thread? Oops, I think I'm out of bobbin thread. Okay, hold on. Okay, so I'm being super cheap, and I'm using leftover bobbins. Okay, so once again, I'm stitching across the top line here, and this is where I'm really just eyeing it the best that I can. And I'm gonna watch where those stitches fall, and if they get off, I'll adjust. They're doing pretty good. Okay, now I've gotten back to the start. Okay, so we've done that. Now I would have you travel. And we would go across. So now we're just practicing our skills, learning about moving the machine left to right. Let's go down to the next one, and then I want to talk to you about direction, because you may notice when you're free motion quilting, if you've been quilting for a while, that your machine likes certain directions and it maybe doesn't like other directions. Feel if you have a preference of one way versus another. Now, I have equal pressure everywhere. This ruler's not going anywhere. However, if you want, you can be more specific and move your fingers. You can stop. You can adjust. Okay, it's really not fair that I've done this for so long and I just know what it feels like. But I remember what it was like and how scared I was with rulers. And look, this one has a chip in it, this one has a chip in it. Does that tell you something? I think it's Kimmy Bruner who said, it's not a matter of if you will chip a ruler, hit a ruler, it's when you will hit one. And just deal with it, it's part of life. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to backtrack over the stitching below, and now I'm going to the right. I will go ahead and talk to you for a minute about quilting top to bottom and bottom to top. Okay, I promise I won't do this much talking once we get to the other blocks, but because I have a line here, it's fine. You're just following the line. But let's say that you didn't mark everything and you wanted to use your ruler to create evenly spaced lines throughout. All right, so let's pretend like that's what you want to do and that these aren't marked, and you make your first line. So we're going to stitch on this line, but pretend like that line's not there, like you made it. Okay, and let's say you want it evenly spaced out to the next line. Well, how are you going to do that? You're going to travel down here. Let's say you travel down as far as you want to go, but you're going to have to hold the ruler back here. Remember how I said I don't like holding the ruler behind the hopping foot because it makes you stretch and move your wrist in weird ways. Plus you can't see. Okay, so that's why, let's just go down here instead. I'm saying if I had started here and I stitched this line, and remember we're pretending like these lines aren't already marked. Well, when I move up, I have this reference line here on my ruler, on my straight edge ruler. And if I know it has to be 3/4 of an inch and use that line, that's all I need. And it's really close to me and I can see it. So that means if I were going to quilt evenly spaced lines on a quilt block like this, my preference is to start from the bottom and work my way up, because of the very fact that I can use the previous stitched lines and line it up with my ruler, and there it is. Now, if you tell me that you are more comfortable using your ruler back here, please do that, because I'm all about what works for you. Okay, so if you were my student, usually the way this works is they're in groups. If we're lucky enough to be in a class where everyone has their own machine, that's great. You just get to practice it 3 times. Otherwise, there may be 2 other people that you're sharing with, and then they get to do theirs. Okay, so the first thing we did was lines. Just nice straight lines. I hope you can see that in the camera. Hopefully with this, the closer one, the thread is kind of matchy. And and matchy to the back, even though it's like a white thread. Okay, so we've done our straight lines. You have learned to hold the ruler. You've learned about pressure. Remember about the pressure towards the hopping foot. You've learned about pulling and pushing the machine the way it needs to go. And you've learned about walking your fingers. We haven't really touched on lines on the ruler, but we haven't really needed that quite yet. Okay, so if you bought the panel or if you're marking your own, go ahead and stitch out a couple more if you'd like. I'm going to move down to this next one. Okay. I think I can get away without advancing the quilt. Actually, let me advance it just a little teeny bit. Okay, this one, it's basically the same thing. It's straight lines. It just gives you more practice with straight lines. Okay, so this one, first I'm going to outline it, and then I may go through and do some curves. I'm just getting used to the machine. So that's what I want you to do, is just getting used to starting and stopping and changing direction, but all with straight lines. And I cheated, I used my other ruler. Let's use this ruler instead. Okay, so pressure to the right with my hand and my ruler, pressure to the left, holding onto the handlebar, and gently gliding this down. Here we go. I hope I don't sound like I'm babying you. I don't like that, and when people teach, I hate that. I hate taking a class when I feel like I'm being babied. I'm just trying to reinforce the ideas, and if I say something over and over again, it's just because I want you to learn it. It doesn't mean I don't think you didn't listen the first time. Okay, so now we're going to go to the left. This might be an awkward, maybe it's easier for you to go to the right, so now you're feeling what it's like to go to the left. And when I did that, I wasn't lining this up with anything other than I started with it pressed up against the foot over here, and I took a look on the other side to see that I'm about 1/4 inch away from the edge, and it just worked out great. Okay, now here's where I would normally hold it here. Can you see how my, oh, it's full. Anyway, maybe from this camera, can you see how I have my leader, the way that I've pinned it on is kind of getting in the way here? So I might do this instead. And if I do this from this side, I'm going to line up my needle stop with the top of this as a good indicator of where I will be staying on a line. Okay, I'm going to walk my fingers up. And when I'm doing it in an awkward position, I tend to use more of my palm than just my fingers. That's something that you'll have to feel out. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the top line. Okay, I just walked my fingers. And there we go. Okay, so now we can do whatever we like. Since these were mostly horizontal lines on the block before, when we get to this block, it's really more about having more vertical lines to stitch. So feeling the machine coming towards you and going away from you. We can backtrack a little bit, and you can practice more on some of those. So sorry, I am just whipping right through this. I think that I want you to try to gain speed and confidence also, but I didn't really tell you what I was doing. I'm coming down, and if I want to, I'm going to bring this other ruler in here. If I want to, I'm showing you this. I can use that needle stop and make a guesstimate of where I think 1/4 inch is away from that line, and leave my ruler here, even though I walk my fingers a little bit. And hopefully it will stop right where I want it to stop. Let's see. There we go. That's perfect. Okay, now you may or may not have noticed that I adjusted this ruler a little bit when I quilted down, and that was just a natural instinct for me, which may not be for you at the beginning, but you will get it. Let's travel over. Okay. And what I mean when I adjusted is that I was watching the thread and I saw it slightly veering off towards the right, and so I adjusted my ruler slightly towards the left to try to get back on track. And that's completely normal. If you look at some stitch in the ditch stuff, oh gosh, I mean, how often is it perfect? The best of us don't follow the lines exactly, okay? That's not what it's about. When you're moving the machine away from you, you have this visual impairment, the needle bar itself, but you'll tend to either look from the left or from the right to be able to see what you're doing. I'm looking, the way that I'm doing this, I'm actually looking right through the hopping foot and watching where my needle is stitching. And that's allowing me to adjust my ruler, and I will slightly adjust it to stay on the line. I don't know if that makes sense or not. That's what I'd like you to try to think about, though. Wherever your best visual is. So when I'm moving away from me, it's not the same visual that I get as I'm coming down towards me. So let's travel over. And if you quilt on a panel like this, or you make your own lines or whatever, you will see which way is most comfortable for you and where you're looking. I'm always looking in the middle of this hopping foot to see where my stitching is. I mean, I'm paying attention to my rulers and everything too, but I want to see where the stitch lands. So continue to do this. This is just a big crosshatch. And again, I am watching. Do you see how my hand is on my ruler and it's allowing me to do this pivoting motion? But I want you to think about the most pressure, and it's pivoting here on that foot, so that if I need to slightly adjust, I just do. I'm using my thumb and my pinky to kind of angle this the way I need it, because as I'm looking at this, it doesn't look completely straight. This fabric is pulling a little bit in one direction, and it looks like there's a little bit of a curve here. So I could make my ruler straight, but I can tell if I make it straight up here, there's a smaller distance here. So this is telling me that I need to do some adjusting. You'll see when you actually do it, and that's because this is fabric. If you were just quilting this out on your own without lines to follow, you wouldn't be adjusting most likely, because it would just kind of work itself out, and it would look perfect because you don't have lines to base where you're stitching from. Do you know what I mean? You're not being judged on being on the line. Your line is going to fool the eye and appear to be where it's supposed to be. Okay, so you're stitching away. You're getting used to going left and right and up and down. And I'm almost finished with the vertical lines. And then I'm going to go back and do the horizontal. You can also play around a little bit here if you want to, although we're going to do that later. You could, try to connect some dots together if you want, but really this block is meant to be getting more used to horizontal, vertical lines, and stitching over top of previous stitch lines. Your goal is to stitch as close to what you had stitched before as possible. So here I'm lining up all of these lines. I did this as a 1 inch grid, so it's lining up on all of these ruler lines, which makes it really fun. Makes you feel like, oh, hey, I think I'm on it. I have it. Now I didn't adjust anything, and you can see I'm just a thread off of that line, but you know what? It's fine. Okay, so as you're doing this, you are just getting more comfortable with going up and down and left and right and feeling the ruler and the pressure and not being scared of it. If you're brand new to your machine and to rulers, I get it. There's a lot going on, and you may be overwhelmed. I've told this story before in some of my first videos that I was so excited to get my machine and get it all set up and everything, but I was scared of it for several weeks. And you know, I quilted on it. I wasn't so good, and I was just scared of it. So, but at the same time, I wanted to work on it so bad. But try to get comfortable with your machine, get comfortable with your tools. We just stitched out this crosshatch. Hopefully, you stitched along with me, and if you were in the class, you would have done it, and then someone else would have done one, someone else would have done another one. If you're by yourself, or if you're in a class and you get your own machine and your own panel, you get to stitch 3 of them. So anyway, work on that. That one's a lot of fun. And then instead of going down, we're going to actually move over, and we're going to look at the diagonal block in just a second. Let's do the same thing that we've done with our other blocks, and we're going to do an outline. This is one where I would walk my fingers because I feel more comfortable doing that and adjusting the ruler as I need it. Okay, so again, remember about pressure. Quick review. With the ruler going this way, the machine going this way, and gently guiding away from me. So watch my right hand. I'm pressing in towards this direction, but I'm also moving away from me. Okay. And then we'll do the top. Right now I'm lining up this line with the block and using that as sort of a reference. I kept my hands right where they were the whole time. My thumb was down below the curve a little bit. Really, it's whatever works for you. Whatever feels the best without too much pressure and too much drag. So you're going to have to get used to how much pressure you need. Look at how I'm rotating the ruler. What looks like a 1/4 inch to me all the way across? Somewhere about like that. Okay, so I'm going to try it. And I'm going to start stitching. And if I need to stop and adjust, I will. If I need to move my fingers, I will. Okay, I felt okay about that. See what that feels like to you. Now you're going on a diagonal versus up and down or left and right. See if you can track over what you've stitched before. And again, I know I'm going from top to bottom, but I'm keeping the ruler towards me while I'm doing it. So again, butt up next to the hopping foot. Pivot this ruler until I feel like I'm still a 1/4 inch away from that line. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so I've got my fingers pressured there. My thumb is off of the ruler. I'm going to stop. I'm going to walk my fingers. Walk my fingers, and there we go. Okay, backtrack over your line. Ruler up against the foot. Pivot until it looks like it's a 1/4 inch all the way. Concentrate your pressure closer to the foot. Now watch. If I had my pressure down here, remember this is where it starts to get that unbalanced thing. So even though I'm pivoting from here, and the pressure needs to stay where the hopping foot is and where the ruler base is underneath. Okay, so I'm stitching down. I'm noticing I'm getting a little bit off, so I'm adjusting the ruler just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to walk my fingers down. Walk my fingers down. I'm a little bit off on that one. Close enough, though. Okay, now this is a long one, so I'm going to do my best. With this ruler, I'm not sure which camera's picking this up, but see, almost to the end of the line, I've got the edge of this ruler touching that. That's a good way to guesstimate that you'll be on the line, unless there's some stretch with your fabric here. So here we go. Walking my fingers, walking my fingers. I'm gonna stop, and now I can use the bottom of the ruler to put it on the line to finish that line. It's pretty good. Okay, and now we're gonna go down. And you could experiment now. If you feel more comfortable putting the ruler over here now to this side, you may. Do what you like. If you want to get a good start, you could do what I just did before with that needle stop, and you could put the needle stop, see how I'm following the edge of this on that line. You could put the needle stop down here towards the bottom. Okay, I'm walking my fingers and my thumb. I'm going to stop a little bit off there, and now I'm going to extend down. There we go. Okay. See what's more comfortable for you with these. Ruler to the left of the foot, ruler to the right. By now you may be getting a rhythm. Now I'm going back to the other side. See what you like. You don't have to stay the same all the time. You don't have to decide. But if you're doing a whole quilt, there we go, and you've got some repeating patterns, you're going to end up figuring out, oh, by the end of the quilt, you're like, oh, okay, this is the way I should go, or I should have gone. Okay, so we did the diagonal. Easy peasy? Yeah? Okay, so you've got 2 more to do if you bought the panel. And now let's go down to the next one.